Students, in today's lecture of EDS, we are going to RTS. We are going to see what are the advantage of EDF over fixed priority. See, in our prior lecture, we have already discussed what is EDF. What is EDF? And that is earliest deadline first in the number of tasks. The task who is having the very short deadline or very deadline is very early, then we give priority to that task or job first. So now we are going to see what are the advantage of EDF over fixed priority, right? So first point that we have to see is that EDF can schedule all tasks, right? That can be scheduled by fixed priority algorithm, but fixed priority can't, right? So see, what I'm trying to make you understand in this point is that EDF, that is earliest deadline first algorithm, has the capacity that it can schedule all the tasks which can be scheduled by fixed priority algorithm. We know what is fixed priority algorithm, algorithm on which the priority of the job is already prefixed. So that is called fixed priority algorithm. Now in EDF, what we are trying to say is that actually we are seeing the advantage of EDF over the fixed priority. You can write it: advantage of EDF over fixed priority, right? So what I'm trying to make you understand is that in case of EDF, what actually happens is that all the tasks that can be scheduled in fixed priority algorithm can also be scheduled by EDF, but priority algorithm cannot schedule all the tasks that can be scheduled by EDF. So you're getting my point. EDF can schedule the task that is being scheduled by fixed priority, but vice versa is not possible. That is, fixed priority cannot schedule all the tasks that is scheduled by EDF. So this point is clear. So this is the advantage of EDF over fixed priority. Now let's see the second advantage. What is the second advantage of EDF over fixed priority, right? So EDF is an optional dynamic priority algorithm. What type of priority algorithm it is? EDF, that is earliest deadline first algorithm, is actually or basically optional dynamic priority algorithm, right? So there is since it is optional dynamic priority algorithm, so you can say that there is no practical consideration for defining priority, right? Since EDF is an optional dynamic priority algorithm, so there is no practical consideration for defining the priority. There is no practical definition for defining it, right? So this is clear. Now let's see the third. What is the third advantage of EDF over fixed priority algorithm? So we'll see that EDF has very less context switches. What type of switches? What is the quantity of context switches in it? See, EDF algorithm, that is earliest deadline first algorithm, has very less context switches. So this is also an advantage over fixed priority algorithm. So you can write it down. EDF has less context switches. That is, the requirement of context switches is less in case of earliest deadline first algorithm, right? Now we'll see fourth. Now we'll see the fourth advantage of EDF over fixed priority algorithm. So what is the fourth advantage? See, EDF is fully utilized by the processor except the idle time. So EDF has the capacity to be fully utilized. The processor can use EDF fully, excluding idle time. So excluding idle time, EDF has, the processor can utilize EDF fully. So you can write it down. EDF fully utilize the processor except idle time. So excluding idle time, EDF has the capacity to utilize processor fully, right? So it can utilize the processor fully, right? This point is clear. Now let's next move to the other point, that is point number 6. See, under EDF will not guarantee that the most of the critical tasks would not miss its deadline under transient overload. So when the, what this point is, I'm trying to make you understand first, write it down. Under EDF will not guarantee, it will not guarantee that the most critical task would not miss its deadline under transient overload. So what is being mentioned in this point is that, see, under EDF there is no guarantee that the most critical task, most complicated task would not miss its deadlines. When there is a task is very, very complicated, it is very complicated, in that case there is no guarantee that the EDF will not miss its deadlines under transient overload. So what he is trying to say, transient overload. Overload means when, when the load is more. So there is no guarantee, there is no assurance that EDF will not, all the critical tasks will not miss its deadline. So there is no guarantee of it. Now next, point number 6, you can say in the EDF, the priority of the task with respect to that of the other task and changes as job are released and completed. It is completed and completed because, why? Because preemptive is allowed. What is allowed? Preemptive is allowed. See, what he is trying to say is, in this point, is that in EDF the priority of a task with respect to that of the other tasks and changes as the job are released and completed because preemptivity is allowed. So what we see, EDF may, what exactly happens, the priority of the task, with respect to the other tasks, and changes of the jobs are released and completed. It can be released also and it can be completed also, because in case of EDF, preemptive is allowed. So these are the advantage of EDF. Now what we are going to see, disadvantage. We have seen the advantages. Now we are going to see what are the disadvantage of EDF. Right. So now we have seen all the advantage of EDF over priority algorithm. Now what we are going to see, disadvantage of EDF. What are the various types of disadvantage of EDF, that we shouldn't use EDF. Right. So everything is having an advantage and disadvantage. So now we are going to see disadvantage. Right. So let's see the disadvantage. What are the disadvantages? Disadvantages. Right. Now let's take the disadvantage. What are the various types of disadvantage faced? Okay. Let's see it. First, EDF is less predictable. Right? So what is the first disadvantage of EDF? The first disadvantage of EDF is that the prediction in EDF is almost very less, or is very less. You can't predict the result, or you can't predict the outcome. So the prediction is less in EDF. This is also a disadvantage. Now let's see the second one. What is the second one? See, second disadvantage is that EDF is less controllable. See, the prediction is less, and also the chances of controlling the earliest deadline first algorithm is less. So it is less controllable. You cannot control it as accurate as you can control the other priority, algorithm. So EDF is less controllable. This point is clear. Now let's take the third disadvantage. What is the third disadvantage? It have more implementation overheads. What type of whether it is having less or not. So what EDF is having? EDF is having more implementation overhead. So you can write it down. EDF has more implementation overhead. Right? So overhead of implementation is more in EDF as compared to the other algorithm. Right? Now, fourth disadvantage, if you have to write the fourth disadvantage, what it's going to be? The computing response time in EDF is very different because it depends on the parameters of the task. Since the EDF depends upon the parameter of the task, whatever the parameter is there, it depends on the parameters of the task. So that's why, the computing response time of EDF is very different. So this is also a disadvantage only. So you can write it down. Computing response time in EDF is very different because it depends on the parameter of the task. So what we have seen in today's lectures, we have seen the advantage of EDF over the priority algorithms, and after that we have seen what are the disadvantage of earlier deadline first. So that's all for today's lecture. If you have any problem, feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.